This is how to build an ADU in Needham. We are the Needham Housing Coalition. My name is Paula Dickerman, and the other steering committee members are not up here. Jan Soma, David Fresca, Margaret Murphy, Magda Schmaltz. All right. We will be recording this. Wendy Blum, who works with us a lot, and Mike Levin from the Needham channel will be recording this. So it'll be on the Needham channel, it'll be on Facebook. We'll try to get it out to as many people as possible who are interested in learning more about this. We also have some handouts for you at the end on your way out, including some things that we probably won't talk about tonight, but some of you may be interested in, like valuation, taxes, resale. And for the few of you who are looking to perhaps build an ADU for income purposes, there's a lot to learn about being a landlord. And so there are some resources there on those topics as well. That was the welcome and introductions. We're going to talk very briefly about what is an ADU and why are people interested in them. And then there will be panel presentations. We'll hear from at least one person about their experience having built an ADU, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. Our panel is Rick Leland from Remodeling Remedies, Oscar Mertz from our planning board, Amy Wortzman from Eastern Bank, and Jim Sullivan, our building commissioner. So very briefly, what's an ADU? It's a smaller independent dwelling unit on the same lot as a residential structure. It can be attached or inside the principal dwelling, or it can be a detached building. The property owner can live in either of those buildings, or the property owner can live in neither of those buildings. They take all forms, as you see here. Detached, attached to the side, interior up, interior down, above the garage. You can convert your garage. There are lots of ways to go here. This is one example of many, many of a detached, separate building ADU. And here, I'll be showing you some pictures, and we have plans. Obviously, you can't read them, but know that those are available to you, of ADUs that have been built in Needham. So this is one, and you can see a very discreet entrance over there by the car to that ADU. Here's another one where you can't tell at all where the ADU is, but it's evidently inside this building. Here's a converted garage as an addendum to the principal dwelling. And as I said, we have lots of plans that you can look at. I will be reminding you that the Needham Housing Coalition website has an ADU page, and there are lots of resources about a lot of things related to ADUs on that page, and we'll talk about that later. But those plans are among those resources. ADUs can enable family members to reside on the same property, but separately. ADUs can provide rental income to the homeowner. They can provide just a separate place, a private place to go and live that's not in the principal dwelling. They certainly can help older residents remain independent and age in place, either in the principal dwelling or perhaps in the ADU, allowing somebody else to live in the principal dwelling. They can provide housing for a caregiver, either for somebody who needs a caregiver for medical issues or a caregiver perhaps for your child. It also provides practical options for the many tenants who are looking for smaller, affordably priced rental housing. And who are the people who can benefit? Well, as we said, seniors, the children of residents, young couples, young families, extended families, local employees who would like to live closer but can't afford to. Perhaps people who want to downsize and stay in Needham. As we said, people who want additional income. And the town benefits, because we then have more housing options for our current residents and other people who would like to live in Needham. That was the little introduction about ADUs. So I'm now going to turn it over to our panel. And as I said, I'd ask you to hold your questions to the end if you can do that. We're going to start to hear from a builder about the process of building an ADU. While there are a number of contractors and builders from whom you can choose, like there's backyard ADUs and there's 1A RE, and there's just a whole lot of them. We are fortunate to have with us Rick Leland, owner of Remodeling Remedies, and he's going to walk us through the process. Rick.
Thank you very much. I'm probably going to repeat a lot of things that she just said, but my name's Rick Leland. I'm the owner of Remodeling Remedies, LLC. I started the company with my wife 32 years ago. The majority of our work is referral-based. We've worked in Needham, Newton, Wellesley, Lexington, and the Winchester areas for 32 years. Our work includes new construction homes, additions, remodels, and now, of course, ADUs. Many people are interested in the ADUs right now, so it's becoming a big topic for us. I'm sure most of you here are either wondering exactly what an ADU is, or can we build an ADU on our property? An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit, which is part of your primary residence. It can be attached to your existing dwelling by constructing an addition, finishing an existing garage, or even finishing a basement area. It can also be a completely separate structure on your property. The unit must be either half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. So for instance, let's just say you have a ranch and it's 1,200 square foot ranch. The maximum you'd be able to build would be 600 square feet. If your house is larger and half of that size is 900 or over, then you can build up to 900 square feet. Any of these ADU options have to meet the Mass Building Code. That's very important that people understand. There's a lot of companies out there that are doing prefabs, and they're being shipped in either within the state or some of them even from other states like Pennsylvania. You have to make sure that the units are going to meet Massachusetts Building Code in relation to not only just the building part of it, but the energy codes, et cetera. And you have to meet all the zoning setbacks as well as heights, and if there's any conservation requirements. These are the things you want to look into on your particular lot before you get moving on it. I'm sure you're going to hear more about that tonight between these other people here on the panel. If you're thinking about building an ADU on your property, the first thing you want to do is, I think, meet with the builder who offers design capabilities, because you're going to need a good team of people to come in and do it in an organized fashion, somebody who knows the industry and knows the zoning laws and the building requirements. It'll make the process much smoother. So sit down with the builder and their architect and discuss your ideas as well as their ideas. You should also discuss your budget and always have a realistic budget for your project. This will determine what type of features your ADU may have. That being said, you may want to consider the different types of financing available to do your project like this. There are many different options. I'm sure somebody here, I think somebody here tonight is going to be talking about that. Yeah, yep, that's Amy over here. So that's an important piece, for people that need the financing to help build it. Maybe, if your parents are selling a house or vice versa, maybe your funds are coming from that, but it's important to understand it. Because these, ADUs can range in pricing, really. If you're doing a basement one, you have to keep in mind they have kitchens in them, bathrooms in them. You have to think about the utilities. Many of the areas, I'm not sure in Needham right now, and Jim will probably talk about that, require a separate meter. So you're gonna have a separate electrical service coming in, you gotta tie in the plumbing, tie in water, and making sure you're sufficient for all that. It's an important piece. It's all doable, usually. To me, I think the most difficult part of it is meeting the zoning requirements on the property. You know, some of Needham lots are small. You know, I've worked on many projects that have 8,000 square foot lots. You know, you have to make sure if you're trying to do, especially if you're trying to do a detached, that you're gonna meet the side setbacks, the rear setbacks, and the front setbacks, all that. That's important. So what you don't wanna do is go and design something and then find out, you know, months down the road that it's not gonna work on your property and you're back to square one. So speaking to a builder, speaking to the building commissioner, which is always, you know, to me is number one on the list, honestly, you know, to find out what you can do. You can look at the plot plans, you know, look at, you know, go down to the town, look at the zoning, and see exactly, you know, what your lot would require to do it. You know, at that point, you know, the builder would follow up. You know, if you decide to move forward with something, we would follow up, getting a plot plan done, showing the structure, whether it's being added on or if it's a standalone structure itself. That way you have a survey done, it's certified, and you know that it's accurate. That's important. So what you don't want to do is take, you know, look, we've had customers in the past that will take like a bank survey when they're applying for a loan, and they're not really truly accurate. And sometimes it's a difference between, as Jim will tell you, it could be the difference of inches of whether or not that fits on there. So that's important to make sure that you meet the required setbacks and you're getting a certified plot plan. So there's plenty of surveyors in this town, and you know, one in particular that I'm not going to mention any names right now, but does, you know, a lot of plot plans for us in this town, and they do a great job, and they know the ins and outs, and I'm sure they're on top of ADUs and everything now because it is becoming a big thing. You know, once you decide that you're going to move forward with it, you know, you're going to get in, you're going to meet with the builder, meet with the architect and design, and talk about what your needs are in it. You know, how you're accessing it. You know, do you want separate utilities? If you're using it as a rental, you know, sometimes it's easier if you have a renter in there, that the utilities are completely separate meter, you know, for any of the utilities. Make sure the service, if you have a 100 or 200 amp service on your house right now, that you're gonna be sufficient to accommodate the new space that you're adding. Because it may require you to upgrade to even a 400 amp service. You know, those are the types of things that kind of get, you know, pushed off the side and people don't realize, you know, you're more interested in the design, you know, how much space do we have in it, but you have to think of those little things as well to make sure that it's gonna work for you. So they're amazing, to me, it's an amazing opportunity for residents, you know, whether you're looking to bring your parents there, even your adult children. It's not getting any easier for, I know my kids, to get into a house now. You know, you have to have some serious income coming in. And, you know, my kids are married and they're, you know, both of them have to work to be able to even afford a house now. So my wife and I, this is my wife here, Barbara, who has worked with me, you know, since day one. You know, we're actually in the process right now of even doing it on our own property. I live in Hopedale. I've worked in this area for really since the start of my business, you know, 32 years ago. We came out here and, you know, we're all referral. We've loved working. This town has been great for us, to be honest with you. I don't know if I'd be where I am today if I didn't work in this town. You know, we've been outside the town for a couple of years now because we are referral based. So we get referrals into people's friends in other towns like Lexington and Winchester, and then we end up in those towns for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. You know, and we bounce back and forth. So, to me, I mean, I think I covered everything. If anybody has any questions for me after this, at the end of the meeting here, then I'm happy to answer them. And I'm just going to hand it off to right here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Rick. And that was great to jump into the discussion of going and building one. I like the optimism and the action. Hi, I'm Oscar, and I was fortunately just elected to become a planning board member here in town, so I'm excited about the work ahead. And as a housing person, this has always been on the radar screen for me to keep an eye on it, what we can do with ADUs. And there was an interesting discussion on the Zoom this morning that was run by the Boston Foundation, which introduced a new report called turn one, meaning I think it's a race course, and this is like the first turn, or maybe it's a horse race. But in any case, it was an indication of what happened in the first year after this law went into effect on February of 25. Interestingly, they've had 1,600 applications for ADUs across the Commonwealth, and I think 1,227, I think, have been approved. And so that's pretty good. You take 351 cities and towns, that's what, 3 to 4 per town, if you're counting. And then the other interesting number is put that into the context of just over 3 million housing units in the Commonwealth, which includes single family, multifamily. So again, we now know that an ADU can be built. One ADU can be built on a lot, but you could build that on a lot with multifamily or on a single family. So again, the state has tried, and the message from the state is that we want to make it very clear that we like ADUs and we want to make them happen. And so again, what they've stated in a lot of their guidance and a lot of their sample bylaws, which we have then recently passed, we've aligned we just passed in town meeting, the bylaw, which is trying to align as much as we can. And we are allowed to do some minor variations, but there is generally a diligence here to align so that there's no confusion for this guy. I think he appreciates clarity and objectivity. So I think the one thing that's important to remember is there are infinite numbers of solutions for everyone to build an ADU. Whatever your needs are, whatever your condition is with your house or your lot, whether you have an existing structure that might be either your primary residence or you have an accessory structure that you might want to convert. All those things are options, and money's going to become a significant issue. Rick has outlined how complicated the process is, and so again, we hope that some of the stories that you'll hear tonight from people who've done them, or to take a look at some of the resources that we've got, are pretty interesting. There's some amazing stuff that's being done by the state. They're working very hard. They're going to be announcing in the spring of 26 that there is this ADU incentive program, which is a combination of design information, tools, how do you get through the process, and then also there's some funding available for people who qualify. I think it's $150,000 for an attached and $250,000 as an assist for a detached ADU. So again, there's qualification application, and that's all going to happen later on this year. So I think there's a lot of, in this, I won't belabor this, but the Zoom covered some of the things that are interesting. The state is very much now attuned to the issues that are coming up in various towns as they do align their bylaws with the state. And so some of the challenges are, what do we need to do to actually make some adjustments and revise what we have just seen as the law based on what we're learning from these various towns and cities that are going through the process. Some of that may be that some people may want to make larger ADUs. Reality is that some places may want to see something up to 1,200 square feet. So these are kinds of, and even what is not clear in words, but is clear in the information from the state, is that there was a recent decision in, I think it was Leicester, where someone was wanting to do a 2-bedroom, and that was allowed. So the reality is, with these ADUs, there is no stipulation that they can't have 2 bedrooms. So you are correct?
That's correct.
Yes. So I think what's interesting is it does, when you think about, well, I think about my first apartment, which was 600 and something, and it had 2 bedrooms. We know you can do it in a lot less than 900. So definitely, especially with the cost of things, it certainly makes sense to think about, I don't need to use 900 square feet. And so, again, I don't know how many here are interested or poised or curious or ready to go or need one urgently, but I'm glad to see you all here, and we just want to have these kinds of sessions as much as we can to help clarify things. I know Jim's going to be working hard to get up to speed with what we've just passed. I imagine he's already ahead of the game, but knowing Jim, but I know that is the first place to start with all your conversations, in addition to talking to builders who will be, and architects if you're interested. So I think for me, if anybody has questions about the zoning, I'd be happy to do that. But I think in general, I think we want to keep, let's do that. Just keep those questions to yourselves, and write them down, and we will move on.
Terrific. Yeah, I mean, questions is why you're here, right? So we want to get to that part. So we will, at this point, hand it on. Actually, if we could go to Amy first.
Fantastic. No, that's great.
Hello, am I on? Yeah. Amy Wortzman is Vice President of Community Outreach at Eastern Bank and is a Needham resident, and is passionate about helping people finance their homes. So Amy, what are people's options?
Thank you. That was such a great intro. Just to say, my career actually has been in what we call low moderate income housing solutions. So when I look at all of this, to me, it's like a puzzle. And so when ADUs started coming in, my brain started spinning, right? Like, how are people going to pay for them? Quite frankly, if you have the cash or the assets to use that liquidity, I always tell people, try to talk with a financial advisor as well, because there could be other ways that better suit your position. So we have ways like home equity lines of credit. So if you own that single family and you have equity, maybe you have already paid off your first mortgage, then you could get even a line of credit or a small mortgage. If you still have a mortgage, you can get what's called that second lien or home equity line of credit. In the industry, we call that a HELOC. And just to go a little bit further, on those home equity lines of credit, there are options for what we call variable interest rates, which can fluctuate, but you also have the ability to lock it in and get what's called a fixed payment. Right now, we have really wonky interest rate environments. It's like day to day right now in my world as a mortgage lender, hour by hour even sometimes. So some people really like that security. Personally, when I talk about finances and financial literacy, I'm always talking about getting that fixed payment. I just advocate for that when you're doing long-term planning. Just peace of mind, right? Set it and forget it. So those are ways that you can tie loans to the property. And as we were saying here, the state is really behind this. In my world, we work with a housing agency called Mass Housing. Mass Housing has come out with an ADU product, which is also a second mortgage, but those guidelines are going to be a little bit easier for, again, our low moderate income clients. Because honestly, we're talking a couple $100,000. I mean, in other markets, this is a straight out like home purchase. And candidly, you were alluding to how hard it is for people to buy. I work with first-time home buyers all day long. It is really challenging. I mean, it is true. The numbers that you have to see on income and what people are sort of forgetting, we live in an environment where a lot of people have debt. And so it's not just like you need the income, but you need to have that whole picture. So when I think about, who could maybe move in with that ADU or rent it or all that, I love that. Again, that answer to the housing stock. So you can go walk into the bank, get your own equity line. Mass housing products are also through the banks. There's a whole list of participating lenders. And then just to start thinking creatively, I'm always an out-of-the-box thinker too. You don't necessarily have to use a mortgage. You may be in a position where you want to use some cash and maybe another type of loan. All of that is available. And I just have to throw out, because I am a banker, right? You have to be qualified and credit worthy. But I also want to say here, like, if you're not sure, or maybe you do have a credit issue and these are still in your, something you want to do, don't be shy. We work with people all the time, so if it's not ready right now, we can figure out that roadmap. I mean, I'd love for all of you to be golden stars and ready to go tomorrow. But again, the reality is life happens. And I don't want anyone to feel embarrassed. I say this with love. Maybe you're someone who is so far into your life that you're not really using credit, and all of a sudden you want to get a loan, but you don't have credit. That happens. People lose their credit scores. I can even help you figure out how to get your credit back with starter loans and build back up. So the whole objective of really talking about financing and ADUs isn't to get into payments and interest rates. What I want you to think about when it comes to money, I love this one from grad school, no margin, no mission, right? No money, this isn't happening, right? You're not coming for pro bono. Love you, but I get it, right? So we've got to figure out that money. So I do love the idea of getting some designs and everything. And candidly, if someone were to come to me and say, I want to get an ADU, what am I going to ask? How much do you think you need? and we can kind of figure it out just based on estimates, but I do love getting an idea and then getting into the numbers. My favorite phrase is know your numbers, because also he doesn't want to go down a whole path if you can't pay for that path, right? So it's kind of like, don't go look at the $1 million house if you can only afford the 500. And again, I say that with respect. So the big thing to take away tonight is, right, put that plan in place. Get the builder, get the money, do it all compliantly, of course, but think about all the different ways that that can potentially, like we said, bring you income, maybe relieve the stress of a big house. Maybe you're done with your house. You want something smaller, but you don't want to give it up. And I grew up in 900 square feet. That is totally okay. But I love the idea that there could be some flexibility. That's what I was hearing from you, right? It's not set in stone. So we're all learning about this together and figuring it out. So at the end of the day, your puzzle is your own. And at the bank, and lots of all the banks, like Massachusetts is great. We've got so many in Needham. We should all be able to put together some financial plans for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amy. All right, so maybe you want to build one and you're thinking about how to finance it. So the next thing is to learn some of the nitty-gritty about the requirements that we have here in our building department. So you're on, Jim.
Good evening, everyone. Jim Sullivan, Building Commissioner for Needham. I've been here for 3 months. And I'm very happy to be here. So there are 2 building codes. There's a 1 and 2 family building code, and then there's the base building code. So if you have a single family and you add an additional dwelling unit, you fall under the 1 and 2 family residential code. So for a traditional single-family home with an ADU, it's the exact same code. If you have a freestanding ADU in the back of your property, for scale, a 900 square foot ADU is a large 2-car garage, a little bit wider, a little bit longer. If you keep the peak of that structure at 15 foot or less, then the setbacks would be 5 feet. 5 feet side, 5 feet rear. And it would fit in the property just like a 2-car garage. Not too obtrusive to the neighbors because it's not high, and you can landscape it and fence around it. If you go with a higher roof, then that requirement for those setbacks now meet what the same requirements as a full dwelling unit. So it's in your best interest to tuck that in the corner of your property and go with the low peak. The neighbors will appreciate it. Now, if you have a 2-family and you say split one of those units, it becomes a 3-family. Now you move up to the base code. Now there's a lot more requirements that come into play. You're looking at sprinkling the new ADU unit, and if you do a lot of work to the existing structure, then you could kick in the requirement to sprinkle the whole building. So that really raises the cost on the construction, but the structure's already there. So it offsets. That is become popular. People don't really pay attention to that aspect of ADUs, but that's happening. People are splitting that first floor, making 2 small apartments. And some are doing it and making 4 units, splitting both floors. As far as, Rick talked about meeting all the building codes. The other aspect is your services, your utilities. The ADU will be an electric building. You can put solar on it. You do not have to put solar on it. I would recommend it. Your bills would be next to nothing. There are requirements through DPW for water and sewer. Mainly, they want a video inspection of the sewer main prior to anyone tying into it to basically confirm sizing and condition. Same thing with the water line, but for the most part, it should be able to handle an additional bedroom with 2 people living in it. That's for detached. and they want them connected on the property rather than going into the street and tying into the mains on the street. You can go either into the house, or you can go outside of the home and tie in somewhere between the curb and the house, the main house. One aspect that seems to be popular are augers and pumps. So that would mean your storage from your unit would go into a barrel. It would get ground up and then would be pumped back into the house, right into the sewer main. I think it's just might be the most cost effective. It seems to be popular. Digging is far, and it's a smaller pipe, and it just seems the way people seem to be doing them. What else? As far as building permits, it's the same as building a house. You'll get plumbing, electrical, building permits, you'll get plot plans, you'll do stormwater, meet the stormwater requirements for the town. Water, sewer. Oh, one other thing. So these are two separate dwelling units, or essentially a rental unit. That means the renter has, by state law, has a right to have full access to their utilities. So keep that in mind, especially for attached units. Detached, it's pretty standard. You're going to have electrical panels going to be out there. You're going to have heat system, probably mini splits seems to be the way to go, or will be there, and your water probably will have a shut off out there. Attached units, you have to separate. If you have a finished basement, it's just not, people seem to think you just say, oh, I'm going to call it an ADU now. No, it's a separate apartment requiring fire separation. So that drop ceiling in the basement, that has to become a fire rated ceiling. The walls separate that unit from common areas is a fire rated wall. The electricity has to be separated to a separate panel. Heat has to be separated. Water is just another meter. That's not too big of an issue. Sewer, same thing. It's going into the same sewer main of the house. So it's just like putting a bathroom in your basement. But it's the cost of fire rating and separating things, and fire rating like posts that are supporting the main home. It's unrealized costs that creep up on you fast. I think that's about it.
All right, thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists. There's one thing I'd like to do before we open it up for questions, and that is to hear from somebody who's built an ADU, a homeowner who's built an ADU. Andrew, where are you? Yeah, please come on up. Andrew McKinney is a Needham resident who built an ADU a couple of years ago, and he's going to tell you why and what it's been like.
All right. Hi. We built an ADU. We completed it in spring, actually about 4 years ago, exactly, spring of 2022. We built it because we wanted to have a house that my mom could live with us, but also maintain some independence. So we built from the ground up, and you can't see her unit from the outside. It's very cohesive. It looks just like a regular single family. You open into a door near our garage. There's like a mudroom. One door goes into her living area. One door goes into the main house. And then she has kitchen, living, half bath. Upstairs above the garage is her bedroom and a full bath. But I think it's a really great option for folks, especially like that, maybe don't need or want to be in some form of senior housing or a retirement home, but need some support. So it works very well for us. And I think that the idea, for folks also for rental potential is huge. So I'm an advocate for it for sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
Stick around because there may be a question for you
Yes.
too.
I work in real estate, so I can say how much there is a need for rentals as well. So, I'm all for that they're making it easier now.
Great. Thank you. All right, what we're going to do is David is going to take this mic and run around and amplify your questions for our panel or for Andrew. Also, there's a lot of expertise in the room, so we may call on some of you to answer some of these questions. So who's got one?
I have a couple general ones I hope are helpful for other people too, and one that's a little bit maybe more specific. I think mostly for Rick, maybe a little bit for Jim. The more specific one, and if this is something I should ask after, I'm happy to do that. We live down on Rosemary Street. The Rosemary Brook goes through. We know we'll have some conservation issues. My challenge is sort of with this process, do I talk to the town first and try to figure out if it's even possible? Or like Rick said, do I work with, do the work to find the builder and then work through them? Maybe I'll end up doing some work that won't come to fruition. That's one of my questions. And the other quick ones are, how long does it take generally from start to finish? And also, I know, Rick, you're a builder, so you may have some perspectives. You mentioned the prefab. I was just wondering for us if you have like the pros and the cons of each, and maybe that somewhat relates to the timing question. Thank you.
Yep. So let me address the conservation issue. Before you spend a penny, that information's free. Stop over at the PFAB building and talk to Deb Anderson. She's the conservation agent. And she can pull up a map with your property on it and really determine what's feasible and where you can do it on your property, or if it's not feasible.
So the next question was how long they take? Yeah, so it really depends on what you're actually doing. So if it's in a basement, that's probably your quickest option. Converting a garage into an ADU space is also going to be fairly quick. You're looking at. So I always recommend to our customers to try to get as many decisions made prior to the start of the project, because that's what delays a project, is trying to make decisions on the fly. Sometimes, we're moving too quick and we're looking for answers today, but maybe our clients aren't ready to make those decisions yet. They're waiting for something else in order to finalize a different decision. But the more answers you have, the quicker it is. So, doing a basement renovation can be 12 weeks to do that project. With all the answers and everything decided on. There's going to be some things always that come up in the project that you're going to change a little bit, or not really quite sure exactly what you want. Because it's like building a house, to be honest with you. because it has all the same things that happen in a house. There's plumbing, there's bathrooms, there's tile, there's paint, there's flooring, cabinetry, appliances, the whole works. And you got electric, plumbing, the whole works. One of the things, if you're doing a basement, sometimes it can take a little bit longer. If you do have to do a pump system in it, if your sewer main is higher than the ground level, then you're going to end up putting some type of pump in the ground in order to pump up to that level. So because it's going to be, you can't gravity feed into it. Garage renovation, very similar in time frame. I would say average 12 to 16 weeks on it. And for a new construction, depending on the size of it and to what detail, because you are going to have some clients that are going to want, their ADU to look like the Taj Mahal. It's just the case. Some people are okay with the basics, other people want more. But building a house today, it's a lot better than it was back in the COVID days when we were going through having difficulties getting windows and materials and stuff. We got a grip on it now. There are still some things that take longer, but we now know how to, prepare for it. So we're ordering things earlier than maybe we would have normally on a project. But building, your average ADU, I think, with fairly good detail in it, maybe a good amount of lighting, tile showers, things like that. You're looking at probably 20 to 24 weeks to do a project like that. But it definitely takes a good team. It really does. I think it's important no matter what to make sure that you have, good architect, good relationship with your builder, so that everybody can work together. And just, I always tell our customers to follow the guidance of your builder when you're working, or your architect. If you have an architect representing you, to follow that guidance no matter what another family member may have done, maybe no matter what the builder across the street did. Every builder has their own way of building and a process in which they follow. That works the best for them in order to keep a job on schedule. If they go off track, that it mixes up the process a little bit. Just kind of be prepared for it. But I think on an average, you're looking at, 12 to 16 weeks for attaching to the house or in a garage, and then 16 to 20 on building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have experience, or is there anybody in the room who knows about prefab ADUs? What's happening there?
I mean,
You do?
Well, not in the ADU context, but we did build a house long time ago, back in the 80s. It was, we built it through a company actually in Canada. It was built in 4 pieces and trucked to the site in Maine. House is still standing and doing fine. And the major reason we did it was we were living here in Needham, and we were putting this house up in Maine, and we didn't want to deal with the vagaries of weather if it was going to be stick-built. We much preferred to see it built in a factory and then trucked to the site. And we didn't have to supervise the construction on the site. And it turned out to be, I think, a good decision. I assume it'd be a lot easier now than it was 40 years ago, but I don't know.
But thank you. Another question?
I'm going to ask 2 questions. Do you want me to do it now? So, nobody said anything about parking requirements. If somebody could, Oscar.
Yes.
I'm sorry? No parking requirements. So, if you're going to add 2 cars to the lot because 2 people are going to live in the ADU, no requirement of where you put the cars.
No.
Off the street.
Yeah, off the street is the only stipulation, that there's no overnight parking, so.
Are ADUs allowed throughout the town in every zone now?
Yes. Wherever there's single-family zoning, or say single families are allowed either by right or by special.
Okay, so in effect, there's really no such thing as a single-family zone anymore. Because every place you can put in a second unit, right?
You can add
Yeah,
a small
okay,
ADU.
thank you, thanks. Thank you.
Yes.
Just to follow up on the prefab. So Massachusetts has a manufactured building program where each plant that manufactures the building that is coming to Massachusetts gets pre-certified. So they go to the plant, they certify the build, they certify the designs, they get stamps, they get numbers. So when they get delivered, we as inspectors go to those stamps and confirm they have all the Massachusetts information on them. So if you're looking at prefab units, you best go on mass.gov, and you should be able to find a list of available prefab manufacturers that meets the mass approvals. Because if you put something up without those tags, then we can't see behind the walls and see the wiring and see the the plumbing that was run. Where through the mass approval system, they've already done that.
Hi, thank you. Can you please address energy codes, stretch energy codes? Does that all come into play with an ADU?
Yes, it has to meet all codes, just like you build in a 5,000 square foot house. Off of Needham, a 10,000 square foot house.
Hi, I have a question regarding the coverage area. So if you're putting in an ADU above ground, and let's just say it's not you're building it in a garage, does that count towards your coverage area now for the lot? And does that also count towards your floor area ratio?
Good question. I'll give you 2 scenarios. This is what we were, as I was preparing to describe ADUs at town meeting. This is a really interesting issue. And from what I've heard from our town council, the interpretation that he believes would be the appropriate one is if you are building a brand new house and an ADU is part of that concept of your initial build, then the entire project is restricted to what would be your maximum coverage and your maximum FAR. Fast forward, you've just completed your new house and you've maximized your lot coverage and your FAR. You can now go build an ADU. They do not, that would be considered an unreasonable restriction or prohibition for building an ADU. Because that's, you're saying that we're going to have dimensional requirements in our town that are preventing that ADU from being built. So ironically, it's a both and situation where you can actually build one and you are restricted if it's in the context of a new construction design from the beginning, or if it's done later on, you want to add an ADU and you already happen to be completely.
So if you have a house that's finished, you maxed out, it's new construction, you maxed it out, like area coverage, floor area ratio, everything, and you decide to put an ADU later on, then there's no limitations. You could put that 900 square foot on the lot.
There's no case law right now that is addressing if there should be a moratorium. I mean, there may be some changes to this that say you're going to be, this is my own personal point of view. There, as you described it and as I described it, and I believe this is correct. I don't know if you know this yet, but it is one of the strange
I'm just asking
anomalies.
because a lot of the new construction now seem to max out. Like, you got a 10,000 square foot lot and you have an 8,000 square foot home, including finished basement, finished attic. So if those people are also allowed to put another ADU, another 1,000 square foot, it's just would make that lot look even smaller, and it just, just density is just kind of crazy at this point. So.
Yeah, I think, again, it's going to depend on the actual lot. I mean, you may find that if there are extenuating circumstances like stormwater dimensions requirements for putting in the systems, there are going to be some things that are fundamentally very important that do trump. Pardon my French.
So along those,
they would be restrictions like conservation restrictions, wetlands restrictions are things that you can't you override. So there are some issues that may come into play for a particular lot that might have you either limit where it is or how big it is.
Okay.
But they would, again, I think the state is saying they're going to try in every capacity to figure out a way that this can be done. So again, I can't say that I know all the answers, but that is the issue that you brought up, I think, is one of the things that will probably get addressed in this next round of the state looking at this, because there may be some reasons why you would want to put a moratorium, say you can't build an ADU and then within a year or 2 years after you just completed your large house. So again, I'm just speculating.
Along the same lines, so basically, I know now that if you build a house, the basement and the attic, if you finish them, they don't count towards the total finished square feet or whatever. So if you're doing a ADU in a basement or an attic, then that wouldn't count towards your floor area ratio limitations. Is that correct?
Well, again, I think if you're building it inside the envelope and everything is already maxed out, then presumably that's.
But if you're doing it in a basement, which nowadays, based on the zoning laws, that area it's considered is not part of the floor area ratio.
Correct.
And the same thing with the finished attic. So if you do
Correct.
the ADU in one of those spots, I guess you don't run into that issue. All right. And one more question. If you have a garage with a larger attic, does the space above the garage, is that considered like first floor, second floor, attic space? What is that considered for finishing purposes?
Well, if you're talking about, if this is an attached garage, so the garage is in the house, then
garage.
the second floor would be over the garage, and then there could be attic over that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, there's no difference.
Right, over there.
Gonna make me run. Thank you. How are these going to be valued? You know, if we can get a loan for 250,000 because you meet the threshold for the, you know, below $200,000 income, you build your nice 900 square foot, $250,000 mini home. Building it in Needham is going to value it way more than building it in, you know, Holliston or somewhere else. Does the town have any thoughts on that?
I'm standing Michael Diener was here and had to leave, unfortunately. He's one of our assessors. I'm not sure what I know actually answers your very question, but here's what I was told. It's very general. He said that if you add square footage to your house, the value of the house will increase. He also said that it will not increase proportionately. It'll increase less than that. So you have 1,000 feet, you add 500, I mean, it's ridiculous, but anyway, you add 500 feet, maybe it would increase 250 square feet more. So it's not a proportional to the amount of the addition. And your taxes would be affected, you know, in some way they would go up. That's all I know, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to wait for that
Yeah.
other shoe to drop, because we're putting in, as the gentleman said, the builder, we're going to put in bathrooms, building kitchens. Those are the more expensive ends of the construction. We're not doing a big open garage. We're putting in some more expensive per square footage. So if you then end up tying it into the Needham square footage of, you know, $400 a foot plus or minus, you know, it's going to be on the higher end. So I would just bear that in mind if you're going to build. I'm looking around the room, seeing a lot of people in this room. I'm thinking, you know, we want to stay in Needham. Our house is too big for us. Let's build ourselves an AUD for ourselves and then maybe rent our house. But you know, you've got to make sure everything covers. And the rental level I'm seeing in Needham doesn't cover the taxes very, very easily with the cost of the houses.
Other questions?
Is there a naming convention for what the address will be for like the detached ADU?
It varies from town to town. For detached, sometimes they may take the house number and put an R with it, like rear, for rear unit. Excuse me? Is it up to the property owner to do what they want? No. It's between engineering department who works with the post office, basically. And there's different setups where if you have say a two-family, where if you have two doors is one thing. If you have a single door with two doors inside, then they look at that different. So it's, with these units, if a number is available between the homes, they might actually give it its own number. There's a whole bunch of things that come into play. But it's key because it's for 911 purposes, right? That it's going to be able to get found. So they'll figure something out that's going to work.
So I can't make recommendations then to them.
Good question, though.
Over here.
Hi, I'm afraid I have two questions. The first one is if there are any gotchas with a situation where, let's say we want the ADU to be for a family member, but there's a second bedroom and we want that to be for a support person, and for various reasons we need to treat the family member as a renter, maybe for some of the benefits that they qualify for from the state. Does that get us into any situations where we have two renters and that's not allowed or complicates things, or no?
Well, from my perspective, it's just a dwelling unit. That's a rental unit. How you use that is certainly up to you personally.
Okay.
And while we're discussing that, if you have a finished basement and you want whether it's an adult child moving back home or a family member, ill health, they're going to move in with you, you're going to take care of them, into your finished basement. You do not have to convert it to an ADU. You don't have to convert it to an in-law. unless if you want to add full kitchen down there with the with stove, and then there's a process for that. But without a stove, you can put in a sink, you can put in a fridge, you can put in coffee makers and all that good stuff. We've had permits pulled for a couple additional doors for privacy reasons, but there's no requirement because you have someone living there who's not it could be your aunt, not, it's not your children per se, or your parents. There's no requirement. As long as you are related by blood of some type, then it's family.
Right, but if we wanted to have a rental agreement with the family
member, a
member,
caretaker is totally separate as far as this discussion.
Okay.
And I don't think the town of Needham really gets involved into that.
Okay.
Right.
And insurance, right? How you set up your liability if you want them to be a renter. I'm thinking like a mortgage person here. So my immediate thought process was, if you want it like a renter, an investor, of course, insurance, right? Set it up that way, because I'm assuming you would want your paper trail to match.
Okay. My second question was much more general. Assuming we're not, like emotionally tied to always living in our house, could whoever wants to talk about the difference between building an ADU versus selling our single-family house and buying a two-family house somewhere?
I'll take a quick answer to that. I'm going to be honest. My first response was, okay, get ready for a hard market. It's doable. It's totally out there. Again, speaking from the street in terms of mortgage, if you're very serious about that multi, you probably don't want to be contingent on the sale of your departing residence. It will weaken your offer unless you can set up your finances so that you are not contingent, which is a beautiful segue into why you might want a home equity line of credit before you list that property. So, real life example I'm going to share with you right now. I have a guy, he lives in a house, he's got 3 little ones, it's too small. He's buying a much bigger home, and so we are helping him with a home equity line of credit because he set that up before he thought about selling it. And now he's going to pull money off his home equity line as a down payment on the next. The kicker is you have to qualify holding both properties, but there's lots of ways to show the rental and things like that. So just on the street, you want to try to not be contingent because most sellers will not accept your offer.
How is that different from selling a one family and buying another one family?
It's not. It's all about, for me, it's all about, to your point, I mean, you can buy anything. It's just about, if let's pretend she's your counter, she's up against you on the house, and I'm going to decide who I want, you're more risk to me because you have to sell. Yeah, but you're right. There's no difference in what you ultimately buy.
Okay. Otherwise, is one going to generally end up being, much more expensive? I mean, because you've got the cost of the ADU, which you could add on to the selling price of the house you're leaving, which gets you more of this other two-family, and you could change neighborhoods and so on. But there's no blanket statement like, oh, that's always better if your goal is X or Y. Okay.
Is there a doctor in the house? Is there anybody here who has experience as a real estate broker, for example, who can answer that question? Andrew?
Yeah. No, I mean, I work as a real estate agent, so I can answer in 2 parts. One,
yeah.
I agree 100%. It's very difficult to make offers on any properties contingent on the sale of your existing home. But the second thing is, depends on the town you're looking at. Multifamily homes are dwindling down. Like the true 2-family, 3-family home, it's a dying product because developers have turned them into condos and sold them off individually. Here in Needham, most of the time when a multifamily comes up, a builder knocks it down and does 2 very pricey townhomes. So to me, I guess it's twofold. One is, where are you looking, and is there a product? And then 2, the financing of it. It's tricky. The best way to get a seller to take a sale contingency is a seller that has been struggling to sell, and then you let them, you convince them that you're ready to list your place and that it's an attractive product that they won't be waiting months to, consummate the sale. So does that help? Yeah, I guess as an end note, I would say, if you have an entry-level single-family home in Needham, it's not going to be hard to convince somebody that it's going to sell. But, you know, the condo market in the Boston area is tricky by town right now. So if you're like, I have a condo, you know, in a certain area where there's a lot of inventory, they might say, geez, is that actually going to sell? So depends on what you have, I think.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah, please.
So if the renting, sorry, I lost my words. What am I trying to say? I don't know. The rental, rent control. If rent control passes in this state in November, what happens to people with ADUs? Is that affected? Is the rent that you can charge, if it's for a caregiver or for your parent or a stranger, how is that going to be affected?
Who knows, there's a cap in that ballot question of that it only applies for over certain numbers of units, right?
Three family owner occupied.
Okay, 3 family or more. So it would not apply for an ADU, correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
I haven't read it, but that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, if the lot's non-conforming, because if you don't have enough, frontage, and I don't know what the rules are, but does that stop you from building it?
Do you want to take that?
No, these are ADU by right. That's how the law reads. So if you can fit it, and keep in mind you need 10 feet from any other structure. So a lot of lots you can't really. You could build a 8-foot wide by bowling alley lane. But if you can fit it, and then by this law, you have a right to put it there.
Right. And then I guess the other question, could you put a detached garage with an apartment, this 900 square foot limit or whatever the limit is based on the house, that's just the apartment side, the garage wouldn't be part of that square footage? Like, if you're going to put, say a detached under 15 feet, garage on this side, apartment on this side, it's just the apartment side that's limited.
Yes.
Right. That was.
Yeah, that's doable.
I would say one thing that's in terms of non-conforming conditions. So it could be your primary residence that has a non-conforming side yard setback, and you want to do an attached apartment in that, or attach it and extend that non-conforming setback. That would be doable. Or if you have an existing accessory structure like a garage, and it's sitting closer than 5 feet to the side yard, that again, if you restore or renovate that and you meet the definition of keeping more than 50% of it and you stay under the 15-foot height, you're still allowed to have that building keep that non-conforming setback. So again, I think the state is looking to find ways to allow these things to happen regardless of whether you may be an existing non-conformity that you'd want to add to that.
Okay, thanks.
Can I just add in? I'm curious about what do they call the mini homes? On TV
Tiny
people make
homes.
those
Tiny
things.
homes.
Tiny homes. Is that something that doesn't count at all, or do we have any idea? I mean, we don't really have climate for that around here to have like a house on wheels in your backyard, but I didn't know if there was any.
I don't know. Anybody know?
I'll say most tiny homes I've seen on TV, and that's the only experience I have, don't meet building code. Ship ladders that go up like this in lofts, and little things hidden under the stairs that you flip open, and it's like a camper or something. It's not.
Sizes of the rooms.
Yeah, it doesn't meet any of the building code. So I don't think. I honestly don't know how the state of Massachusetts looks at them.
Hello, I follow up on his question. I live in a lot that's non-conforming as to lot size, and it was built in 1913. So the garage that was built at that time is right next to the setback and side setback. You know. And in 1970s, my parents, who owned the house before I did, went to the Zoning Board of Appeals to have that one-car garage made into a two-car garage with a breezeway that makes it attached, right? Okay. What can I do there? And because it's non-conforming in every which way, can I keep that footprint? I can do that.
If he's got an existing non-conforming.
They're confirmed.
Right, yeah.
Well, it's different from town to town.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer.
From what I understand, I ran into this in Newton, actually, where the people had a carriage house that was literally 2 feet off of the setbacks. And it still got approved. It's a pre-existing condition on the lot. You know, the big words are, you know, by right, you have a right to do it. That's really what the whole idea behind it is, because if the setbacks of an existing structure were limited, a lot of people wouldn't be able to do them at all. If you're building detached completely, then you have to follow the setbacks. You can't continue on with a non-conforming house. So if you put a separate, am I correct on that? So if you're putting in a separate unit, say you're gonna build a 900 square foot, but your existing house is 10 feet off the setback right now, but it's supposed to be 14. The new one has to be 14 off. You can't continue with that without having a special permit for that. If it's detached, yes, if it's detached. So, does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No, that's fine.
One of the first steps in this process, speaking from the role of an architect, is you have to determine, specifically for that project, if your existing property, your existing structures are legally non-conforming. And you have to determine when they were built, if they followed the setbacks, the bylaws at the time, zoning bylaws in Massachusetts. I think it started in 1937. So anything built prior to then falls into that requirement. One great resource in this town is the engineering department has on file most plot plans for properties in this town. And one of the first steps I do when I'm going to meet with a client is I reach out to the engineering department. There's actually a link on their website now. So instead of having to drive down there, I now can click on the link and ask for it. It can become a very complicated process, but in 20 plus years of doing this, I've only found one property ever that was illegally non-conforming. We took 2 years to make it legally non-conforming, but there's a lot of questions to ask first, and you can start with the engineering department for your property record. So.
Let me follow up on the discussion on the non-conforming use in the new bylaw, section 3.18.7. Basically, the Board of Appeals requires a finding in those situations. So it would basically be a public hearing through the Board of Appeals. I don't know what that finding would mean. Well, it would. Instead of a special permit, and they would review the change, extension, or alteration is not substantially more detrimental than the existing use to the neighborhood. So if it's already there and it's non-conforming, and say it's a garage, and now you're just working within that footprint of the garage, then I don't think it would be detrimental to the neighborhood. That's just my opinion. The Zoning Board of Appeals will ultimately make that decision.
Hi, I think you just answered this twice, so I'm sorry for asking a third time. We have a detached one-car garage, which, and let's say for the sake of discussion, it's got a 3-foot setback from the neighbors. Can we just knock it down and put up something else that starts at that same 3 feet? No.
No.
But we can add to it?
I would speculate that if you're going to take that, and then Jim's going to correct me. So if you have an existing structure that you want to transform, then in the definition of renovation, you have to keep more than 50% of that structure, the perimeter walls. So that means you could expand it, but you have to keep 50% of that structure. And then that allows you to consider that as a renovation. If this was Wellesley, you could knock it down and rebuild it at that existing location. So they do have slightly different variations on how they allow things to be done with existing structures. Okay.
Hands here. Do you have a question?
Hello? Okay. I apologize. I walked in 5 minutes late, so I may have missed, maybe you answered this question. A hungry teenager at home. Can you just talk a little bit about money, if you don't mind? Like 600 square feet is what I think my wife said we could only do, but if you went between 600 and 1,200, sounds like those are the numbers?
900.
900. So what are people having to pay to build a 600 or a 900 square foot? And not a Taj Mahal. A detached. Say you take a garage and you convert it over to.
Obviously, the
Conversion or new construction?
You have an existing garage and you want to convert it to a unit, a separate unit.
I mean, a lot of the costs come down to obviously your choices of what you're putting in there. But let's
Yeah.
just take an average one. You're probably going to spend in the mid threes to maybe upper threes, hundreds.
Square foot? Oh,
No,
300.
period, to do that project, if it's in an existing structure that's already there. So,
Okay, so
yeah,
expensive.
so you're basically renovating a, whatever size space it happens to be, if it's a, 24 by 30 or whatever. If you're building new, it's different because now it's requiring a foundation put in. There's a lot more involved when
Yeah.
you're doing it. To me, it's simpler in a way to build new. As everybody in the industry knows, it's simpler in the long run, but that doesn't necessarily equate to it's cheaper.
So adding on to the back of your house, which I
Mhm.
said you can do by right,
Yeah.
correct? There's no worrying about coverage, area coverage?
If you're adding on for an ADU, and you would be not having to track what that coverage is. If you happen to be fully covered in a large house, that's you're still able to continue to do that ADU, to build that ADU. So you would not be tracking that for coverage or for floor area ratio.
And one other question, you say you can do by right, so you don't have to have a family member that needs a place to live. They could just say, I want an apartment in my back.
Yes.
Which may not be cost effective, but from what I'm hearing, they're 350,000.
That's
Okay.
one of the big changes of what an ADU was all about. We used to call them in-law apartments.
Yeah.
We've done ADUs in the past where it was first coming out, where it had to be a family member, even in this town.
And now you don't have to have it.
All right, we're going to take one more.
My question is regarding the size. So the maximum is 900 square feet. If you build a full basement and you put an attic on that ADU, if you finish the basement, finish the attic space, does that count towards the 900 square feet, or is it just the main floor?
So any space that's in the ADU is the 900
So including
square
the
feet. Oh, yeah.
basement and the attic
Yes.
space?
Yes, you can't build an 1,800 square foot ADU. And can pay 900, no.
All right, thank you. I hope you found this useful and edifying and got some questions answered. I wanted to acknowledge our co-sponsors, for this, which is Progressive Needham and Green Needham, but also the Charles River Regional Chamber and the Needham League of Women Voters. Please check out our website. There really is a lot of stuff there. It's needhamhousingcoalition.com. Easy. And then in the upper right-hand corner, which I'd show you, but we have no more connection, it says ADU, and then there are lots of links to resources there. So please do that. .org. Thank you. Thank you. All right, and thank you to our panel, Amy and Jim and Rick and Oscar. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.